Welcome back to Telltale Books. I've been having an incredible amount of fun reading all these really old science fiction, horror, fantasy stories. And even the stuff I'm reading now, I started a Charlotte Bronte series. Just really enjoying digging into these old works and discovering things that I never really knew much about. Stories that I haven't read, or old stories that I have read but haven't read them for years, and I'm rereading them, and I'm just loving this. And I recently embarked, because of the 100th anniversary of the publication of the first issue of Weird Tales magazine, I embarked on reading a PDF copy that I found online of that first issue. I read a story by William Hawkins so far. It wasn't the cover story, but it was the first story as you go through the magazine. And that was a really good story. And so then moving on to the second story inside the magazine, but this one was the cover story. And I'm going to put the cover. That's why I'm kind of off to the side, so I got room to put the cover up there. It's the cover story of the very first issue of the first English language horror pulp magazine, Weird Tales. Title is called Ooze, and the author is Anthony M. Rudd. I hope that's how you pronounce it, R-U-D. Rudd is usually R-U-D-D or R-U-U-D. This is just R-U-D. So I'm calling it Rudd. He was born in Chicago, Illinois, so not too far away from me, on January 11th, 1893. He died November 30th, 1942, and he only wrote a handful of stories. Ooze was not his first story. A story called The Devil's Heirloom was published in Short Stories magazine on September 10th, 1922. And so the second story was titled Ooze. And the very first issue of Weird Tales was, of course, published in March of 1923. And Ooze happens to be called out by H.P. Lovecraft as one of his favorite stories. And the story here is horror, but kind of science fiction also. You're going to find stories like this published in Amazing Stories and Astounding Stories in the early days. And what happens is, first of all, you're off in a secluded area in an old house, and a scientist lives there, and he's attempting to grow food sources that are larger than normal by manipulating chromosomes, kind of like Food of the Gods by H.G. Wells. So things don't work out, but his son does not destroy the results of the experiment. Instead, these things that were created are living in this house. So this reads very much like an H.P. Lovecraft story. It reminds me of the Dunwich Horror, an old house, a creature being kept secret, a rural area, a family carrying on from generation to generation. But I would say this story feels more science fictional than Lovecraft's work, because it focuses on this mad scientist and has this whole science fictional setup to lead to the monstrosity. And so it is a story about the dangers of science uncontrolled. I feel it's very clearly influenced by H.G. Wells. And probably William Hope Hodgson as well. And it's a very good example of the classic Weird Tales story, the classic Lovecraft story, the sort of thing that you can expect from that period of time in a horror story. And like I said, even a lot of science fiction stories in the 1920s and 1930s followed this same kind of thing. And of course, people are still writing Lovecraftian stories today, but much more sophisticated. So you could probably find a lot of ways to criticize the writing of Ooze. And of course, criticize the fact that this is a story which kind of became a cliche. But you have to question that, because I don't feel it was a cliche in 1923. It became a cliche because of how great stories like Ooze were, and how much they influenced people like Lovecraft and Harl Vincent and other early science fiction and horror pulp writers. I think this story was a trendsetter. Not that I'm the world's expert, that's probably S.T. Joshi, but I think this story was a trendsetter and really set the stage for a lot of horror to come afterwards. And so I give this one top tail status. I really, really enjoyed it. You know, like I say, you gotta overlook some of the pulp simplicity of the story, that the characters are not as brilliantly written as you can expect in current fiction. That was just the times. You know, the authors were more focused on the science fictional idea or the horror setup, and the characters were just there to move around and react to what they saw. And so they weren't really fleshed out as full human beings the way you expect today. And these were just short stories, so you don't have all that much time to get to your point. You know, you can't stop and really talk about their childhood or anything like that. So this is a top tale. It has been anthologized quite a lot over the years. If you got lots and lots and lots of money, you can probably get a decent copy of that first issue of Weird Tales, but it's really going to set you back. I can't afford it. Okay, you can currently find the story in this anthology edited by the famous S.T. Joshi, however you pronounce it. It's volume 2 of H.P. Lovecraft's favorite horror stories, The Dead Valley and Others. And this is a reprint edition that's available right now. The original was published in hardcover in 2016. It was recently reprinted by Dark Regions Press, and so you can buy it from them. Otherwise, you can go online, find it for free in that first issue of Weird Tales in PDF format. A little hard to read the scan, though. Not the most ideal way to read it. And it has been anthologized in quite a lot of different anthologies through the years. So I would encourage you, if you like Lovecraft-style horror, to buy this book. There's 2 volumes of these stories of H.P. Lovecraft's favorite horror stories. I would encourage you to go to Dark Regions Press website and buy both volumes. It's got a really cool cover and a lot of really great stories. A. Merritt and Fitzjames O'Brien, Ambrose Bierce, Robert W. Chambers, Algernon Blackwood. That's just what's in this volume. So, have you read Ooze? Let me know what you think. If you haven't read Ooze, let me know what you think. Leave comments, like us, and subscribe us. give a little to us to our Patreon if you're inclined. And I will see you in the next video, where I will be moving on to read it. I forget the title of it. The third story going through the issue is by Otis and Lord Klein. I'll be coming back with that video in the near future. I'll see you